Hello there and welcome, friends. We're going to talk a little further about how Timothy Gordon and Christian Wagner are doing their best to work that NFP hermeneutic of continuity into the current status quo, and it's going to take a little camouflage or a lot to get it done. And Christian Wagner is kicking and screaming in the end. We're going to find out exactly why in the rest of this video. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're listening to Annulment Proof.
I am experiencing a significant increase in acceleration. Fascinating. This chaotic motion is describable, but not easy.
Timothy and Christopher are experiencing a chaotic motion that is describable, but is not easily defined. That's the part that got cut off. It's really hard to define because you're dealing with the subjective and trying to make it objective, which is why NFP will never work in this hermeneutic. But they're doing their best. We're going to expose the rift here because it's important if we're going to get this straight. Let's continue with our interview with these two. The video. We're going to respond to this. Listen to what they say. We're going to pick up on where they were speaking last in the last video. All right, guys, listen up.
You are bound by a negative precept not to alter one's organs of generation in order to render them impotent. That's what contraception is.
Right, and that's what timing is. You're not altering your organs, but you're altering the timing so that you don't generate, and that's the goal. That's the idea.
So if somebody is out there having intercourse with their wife in a way that is properly subordinated to the ends, have the proper circumstances, etc., then what's the sin? I don't even know what the sin is supposed to be. Like, these individuals are not doing coitus interruptus. They're not contracepting by altering their genitals.
Right. The sin is not properly ordered. I'm going to look up something about horses and mules. Just a minute. Yeah, I was thinking about something just today, and I think I'm right. I'm looking at the Douay Rheims, of course, and it says, because they're talking about Sarah and Tobias, okay? For those who in such manner receive matrimony as to shut out God from themselves and from their mind, and to give themselves over to lust, as the horse and mule, which have not understanding, over them the devil hath power. And this is what contraception does, and it also is what NFP does. It gives the devil power because you are pursuing lust, not procreation. Now, the reason I went to this is I'm thinking I've never seen this in any other Bible, and help me if you can find it. Look at all the other, you go to Bible Hub, but you look at all the other versions of the Bible, and it's like not in there. They don't talk about the horse and mule and lust, none of that. It's just not there. This stuff has been, again, a lot of these Bible translations have been massaged. They get this out, man. I don't know what's going on. I can't find it, but I'm going to continue this video because I was just thinking about that. Anyway, let me go back. Okay, here we go.
Like, there's nothing here that would flag a sin. It's you have to consider the act as it is in itself, with its circumstances and intention. Like no respectable moral philosopher would consider this act and say, oh, well, because actually this individual, because this individual actually doesn't want to have a ninth kid, then therefore this act is somehow identical to an act in which one is, castrating themselves and rendering themselves impotent.
Correct. But just because you don't want to have a first kid or an eighth kid or a 19th kid or whatever, you cannot do the act for some other reason. That's the point. Casti Canubi condemns this law of extreme necessity. In other words, it's got to be rightly ordered. It's not just the nature of the act. The intrinsic nature must be rightly ordered. Doesn't matter how many kids you have. That's all. That's all, Christian.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Even if materially it would be. Yes.
Even if materially it would be. That's another way of saying even if the intrinsic nature of the act is intact. That was a very brief comment that he made there. Let me back up and listen to this. Even if materially it would be. That is what Humanae Vitae 16 says. If you want to use artificial contraception or natural contraception, NFP, both of which do not want to have another kid, okay? So they're saying that the method matters. It doesn't matter about the order of what you're doing. It just is the method. So materially, You can castrate to not have your ninth kid, or you can use NFP to not have your ninth kid. Both of them are trying not to have the baby. That's the point. This is why we say that heresy of marriage has two natures today. That's the problem. That's why these guys are trying to camouflage everything and modernist talk. Hold on, let's keep going.
Yeah, see what you think about this. I'm nodding hard. CCC number 2369 says this is an official codification of the unitive and procreative purposes, and again, this goes back to etiologically to Catechism of Trent and Cassi Canubi and Humanae Vitae. So unitive and procreative purposes, boom, are codified there. And then a couple paragraphs.
Hold on, let's go look at that catechism. See, I like to show what Tim is talking about so we can actually see it versus just kind of like taking his word for it with his papers. 2369. By safeguarding both of these essential aspects. Now, as you know, an aspect is not a purpose. It's the significance, all right? So we're taking which is not nature and calling it nature. So by safeguarding these essential aspects, the unitive and the procreative, the conjugal act preserves its fullness of the sense of true mutual love and its orientation towards man's exalted vocation to parenthood. That's all pro-level wordsmithing, all right? I don't care if you can have all the aspects you want. You can have essential and non-essential aspects. It doesn't make any difference because the essence of marriage has nothing to do with aspects, only ends. So there's no such thing as a unitive end because that's essential because it's the secondary ends, all right? You can have all the dimensions and aspects you want, but you can't have all the ends you want, and that's what they're doing. They're camouflaging the unitive end in, all right? So he's saying, listen to what he says about 2369, all right, that we just listened. Hang on, let's put that back. Hold on.
It says this is an official codification of the unitive and procreative purposes. And again, this goes back to
violation. We just said it's the aspects, not the purposes, Tim. You can't do that. Camouflage, Tim. No. Listen up.
Etiologically to Catechism of Trent and Cassi Canubi and Humanae Vitae. So unitive and procreative purposes, boom, are codified there.
No.
And then a couple paragraphs before, you have 2363, CCC 2363, saying here's the twofold end of marriage, the good of the spouses and of procreation.
Let's look at 2363. So, Tim is right here. The spouses' union achieves the twofold end of marriage, the good of the spouses themselves and the transmission of life. So, they're saying that when the spouses have the marital relations, it achieves the twofold end, not necessarily because the secondary ends do not need to be achieved because they're not essential. But when you start making this poetry law, then it goes to one step, then the next step, then it ends up in the catechism, then it ends up on Timothy Gordon's video. Now everyone thinks it's gospel, okay? These two meanings, oh yeah, here, see, look. The twofold end of marriage, the spouse's union. I guess they don't define union. They assume you think it means the conjugal act, but it's just okay. It could be an emotional union. It could be a partnership union. All right. So yeah, they don't say what a union is there. They just assume you think you know. They think you think we know. Whatever. These two meanings or values of marriage. What? Is it an end or is it a meaning or is it a value? Which is it? We're confusing you to death in our camouflage so you won't know, and no one's going to, you can't ask the Vatican any of this stuff. We have to use our head, okay? Got to get real here. These two meanings or values of marriage cannot be separated without altering the couple's spiritual life and compromising the goods of marriage and the future of the family. Well, what are the goods of marriage? They don't tell you. The goods of marriage are procreation, permanence, and exclusivity. Those are the goods of marriage. But apparently there's more goods now because we've added this other, which is called unity, all right? It's an addition. You can't do it. And this is more catechism. Like I said, wordsmithing to the max. All right, let's go back. Let's let them keep going. Go ahead.
So good of the spouse is always loosely associated with unitivity. And unitivity is sort of a big catch net. It just means it's good for people because it brings them together. It's good for people because it avoids occasions of sin and concupiscence.
All of which are non-essence. And bringing people together. Whatever that means is not a legal statement, nor is it essential to marriage that people be brought together emotionally or relationally or interpersonally, because you have to consent to that, and you have to have the capacity for interpersonal bringing together. What if somebody doesn't like you after 4 years or 40 years? They're going to say you are incapable of being together with me. Boom. They just get the divorce is no sin, because who's going to judge that? Nobody. As in no fault divorce. There's no fault because there's no legal basis for the right to come together, for being together, whatever that means.
And
get the annulment on demand.
2362 says that the acts themselves, when they're failing, some flaw or some flaw has been cured, they are noble and honorable themselves.
2362. Let's go look. See, kids, I did all this homework, got it all ready for you guys. The acts in marriage by which the intimate and chaste union. What is an intimate union? What's a non-intimate union? Okay. Of the spouses takes place are noble and honorable. So they're saying, okay, yeah, the chaste union, but you have to define what chaste is, and that means properly ordered. Okay, that means oriented toward procreation, but they don't tell you that because we have all this love going on now, camouflaged in, and now it's just ordered toward this something coming together thing like Tim is talking about. The true, oh, whoa, there's a juicy one. This is why I don't think Tim shows this on the screen or whatever. He just goes quickly over it, but if you look at it, it's procreation secondary newspeak. The acts of marriage which the intimate and chaste union of the spouses takes place are noble and honorable, not according to St. Thomas Aquinas, because you have to, only procreation can excuse it, but these guys are saying otherwise. The truly human performance. What is a truly human performance? What is a partially human performance? What is a human performance of these acts? What does that mean? This is legal code for no marital debt. Timothy Gordon, call your office. If it's not a truly human performance, it's illegal, okay? Because legally it's not noble and honorable. It's illegal. It's dishonest. It's not cool. You can't do it if it's not truly human performance. And no one can or will define a truly human performance of the conjugal act. It's in the new code now. It has to be done in a human manner. All that means is marital debt doesn't exist, because when, like St. Thomas Aquinas says, when you insist on the debt or you invoke the debt, whatever you want to call it, that's not a truly human performance, because like Tim said earlier, everyone has to be united, having a good time. In other words, consent every time. You invoke the debt, the other spouse says, I'm not consenting, because it's not going to be a truly human performance, because I'm not feeling the unity. And the Catechism 2362 says I have a right to a truly human performance, not some forced thing, quote unquote, because you're giving me this marital debt, caveman, old dead white guy stuff. No. We know better now. Hello, feminism. Tim, Earth to Tim. This is what I'm trying to get at, trying to get this communicated to you. So you don't keep doubling that, because the only reason you keep saying this stuff is Catholic is because you're trying to keep your NFP somehow. It can't be done. Okay. Here, truly human performance fosters the self-giving they signify. Okay, you can signify all the self-giving you want, but a sign is not nature. A sign is not the contract. It's not. Marriage is a contract. You can call it a covenant if you want. Fine. You can call it a banana split if you want. It is a contract, and these things, and it has significations are not in the contract. It enriches the spouses in joy and gratitude. Sexuality is a source of joy and pleasure. God established that the generative function spouses should experience pleasure and enjoyment of body and spirit. Therefore, spouses do nothing evil in seeking this pleasure and enjoyment. Okay. Sounds like as long as I'm pursuing pleasure, it's cool, right? Right? What did we read in Tobias? If you're pursuing that, the devil hath power over you because you're like the horse and the mule that hath no understanding. There's no way around it. That's what it is. They accept what the Creator has intended for them. Yeah, this is kind of more gaslighting. So they're saying they're open to life. That's another way of saying procreation secondary. At the same time, spouses should know how to keep themselves within the limits of just moderation. Yeah, but we don't define that or anything, and they should know just moderation. That's if you keep the act properly ordered and you're pursuing procreation only, which is the only kind you can, then it should stay moderate, I guess, whatever. All right, let's go back to the boys. Cool.
And therefore, what I would respond, well, no, let me read Gaudium et Spes before I make this thing.
Gaudium,
see
that's
what
a
you
problem.
think about it. Gaudium et Spes says, by its very nature, the institution of marriage is ordered to the procreation and education of offspring and to the good of the spouses. This love is uniquely expressed and perfected through the acts proper to marriage. So
let's look at what Gaudium actually says word for word. Hold the phone. Okay, let's look at the real text here, Tim. Okay, Gaudium 48. This is where you were reading. By their very nature, the institution of marriage, it's marriage and conjugal love. Okay, so we have, again, the heresy of the two different natures. So marriage is ordained for procreation. That means ordered toward procreation. Oh, shoot, someone's calling me. Just a minute. That was my son. We were talking about this very topic, and it does get a little confusing. I was going with him on the phone with it. So that's why I like to do it in writing, and we can slow down. And then anything that gets a little bit, you're not sure, we answer it in the comments, okay? Let's finish with Gaudium 48 here. Okay, so by their very nature, marriage and love are ordained for procreation. This is why I say there's two natures. That's not correct. Only marriage. And find their ultimate crown. Okay, so that's not legal language. That's figurative or poetic, so that you find your ultimate crown with procreation. Thus, a man and a woman who by their compact of conjugal, who by their compact of conjugal love. What is a compact of conjugal love, anybody? Compact is another word for contract. So their contract of love. They have a love contract. You have to love me and I have to love you, and those are the contract terms. It's a covenant, okay? And God's in charge, and no more bishop and no more fault divorce. You see the problem? This is what I'm trying to telegraph, communicate to Mr. Law and Order legal brain, Timothy Gordon. It is not a compact of conjugal love. You can have a compact of conjugal love if you want, but that's not what marriage is. You know what I mean? Go ahead. Oh, man. Okay. Thus, by their are no longer two but one flesh. See, it's confusing. You can be one flesh with a prostitute. It's only the physical act that makes you one flesh, and the quote bond doesn't change. You can create a bond with prostitute. It doesn't change. All right. That's a little bit of a weird topic. It's not marriage, but you become one flesh with the prostitute. But anyway, so the point is that the bond, I've said it before, is not an emotional bond that grows and ripens. No, it's just the bond is one flesh and that's it. So, while I'm here, let's go with a little bit of Aquinas, and then we'll get back to Timothy Gordon. So Aquinas says, he goes, I answer that just as the marriage goods, insofar as they consist in a habit, meaning you don't have to be thinking procreation 24/7, but as long as you are not thinking avoiding procreation ever knows your habit, you're consistently, we want kids. As long the marriage goods, insofar as they consist in a habit, make the marriage honest. So if you're not trying to get pregnant, it's not honest and or holy. So too, you see, the honest and holy. So honest means it's you're for the proper end, and holy means it's ordered. So too, insofar as they are the actual intention, they make the marriage itself honest. You got to be Timothy Gordon. You must be pursuing procreation. Congratulations on the new baby. We have an underpopulation problem, big time. It will never be solved if NFP is legal. Never. Because marriage has the wrong telos, and everyone has a reason to delay babies. Everybody has a hard time sometime. Everybody. To make marriage, as regards to those two marriage goods relate to the marriage act. This is where we touch on menopause a little bit. I'm going to do a whole video about menopause. That's going to be my next thing. That's going to be HOTT as regard to these two marriage goods which relate to the marriage act. And those two marriage goods are procreation or paying the debt. Okay? And paying the debt is not a purpose. Procreation is a purpose. So there's only one purpose, but there's two goods. There's the marriage and there's the procreation. Hence, when married persons come together for the purpose of begetting children or paying the debt, notice they don't say for the purpose of paying the debt. No, the purpose of paying children or paying the debt. So somebody's got to be pursuing procreation and someone's got to be paying the debt. Spouse A, procreation, spouse B, paying the debt, or both procreation, which pertains to faith as in exclusivity. They are wholly excused from sin. It is a sin if you're not trying to get pregnant. If you don't have the purpose of begetting children, your marriage act is a sin. It's a venial sin during pregnancy and menopause. Postmenopause. Hold on a second. Here we go. More Tim and Christian. Hit it.
Off on, and I was trying to tell whether you were, because we were talking about this after Will Nolan's recent tweet, is
just a tiny bit.
And to the good of the spouses. This love is uniquely expressed and perfected through the acts proper to marriage. So what I think a lot of people get twisted off on, and I was trying to tell whether you were, because we were talking about this after Will Nolan's recent tweet, is anytime a couple is having sex where a married couple, where the procreative act is not, where the procreative powers of the act, the mutual generativity, is not blocked, then even if the couple might have come together and they're kind of just thinking about, oh, this will be fun to get frisky tonight, they can't help that it's conducive to a noble, and if you go by.
Oh, he's saying it so long, so wordy. What he's trying to say is you don't need to pursue procreation. That's all he's trying to say. That okay? Yeah, Tim, go. No, that's wrong. Go ahead.
A noble and honorable catechetical end, if you go by Gaudium et Spes.
Don't go by Gaudium. Gaudium is by homos for homos or whatever, man. Oh, Gaudium is like pastoral Christopher West poetry. That's what it is, and that's what you get. And it destroys marriage, destroys your compact of love, your love compact. How's that going to hold up in a court of law? How's that going to hold up in an annulment? Nothing. You think you're capable of marriage? Think again, Tim. You're incapable, because if you ever do something that's not quite so quote loving, then you're incapable of said compact. And you can't enter marriage, so it's an annulment. Bam. And if you, like I said, if you think husbands have the final say, that's invalid marriage right there. Talk to your local tribunal. Call them up, Tim. They'll tell you.
Noble and worthy end is the language there. Noble, honorable, noble, worthy. Whether or not their virtual intent is, they're just kind of thinking of, hey, this will be fun.
And like we already said, Aquinas says basically it differs not from fornication, the marriage act, unless it's excused by the goods, and it's a sin if you don't do it. And if it's a venial sin if not properly ordered in your mind. But if it's not properly ordered through an through planning or through a method, that's mortal sin. Like I said, you can, I don't know, put a roadblock in the way and you can't get through, or you can drive your car till it's out of gas and you can't get through. There's 100 ways to not go to California, 100 different ways. All of them, if the goal is to not get into California and you want to get in the car, okay? So the analogies are all over the place and none of them work very good.
There's always the end if it's going to bring them closer together. It's going to make them closer.
That's not an end that's essential. But you guys know that, but I'm just hammering it because we've got to beat this back.
Church is very clear about this. It's a noble end for them to be together.
It's not a noble end for them to be together unless it is ordered toward procreation. And Christopher and Timothy Gordon is saying, hey, if the intrinsic nature of the act is there, it's procreative. Wrong. It must be. You not only it's the intrinsic nature, it must be ordered, which is why Pius XII said you've got to. In midwives, you also have to have the order right, and that's where they did the grave reasons thing, but so they got it messed up. But Casti 59 is what you got to go back to.
It's a noble end that they're doing this act, which by its preceptually is open to the procreative powers.
Say it with me: open equals secondary. Open to procreation. Procreation secondary. Okay? If you're going to have a picnic, that's your primary thing you're doing. If it's rain or shine, you're open to rain or you're open to shine. That's a secondary thing. Your primary object is the picnic. Rain or shine, you're open, okay? However, with the conjugal act, the primary purpose is procreation. You're not open. You can be open to love, but you have to be ordered toward procreation. When you hear open, think secondary procreation.
Whether or not you're trying for a baby or you don't, it by itself has all of these separable joint and several nobilities to it, that it's open to the procreative powers, it makes them close together, and it avoids that. So even if they're feeling most animated by it's cold outside and it's going to be fun, they're being simultaneously, inseparably animated to act by these other purposes. That's all anybody who ever had sex with their spouse because they were in a frisky mood and they're just bored and this is a fun thing would say, and that's all they really have to say.
Well, I think that what we have to remember is that the good is integral in all of its aspects, and the evil is that which falls from even one aspect. So I don't think it's enough to ask the question of, are they intending against this end, and are they married? And is this...
He doesn't think it's enough. Wait, let's rewind that, because Christian Wagner still has a little bit of his super conservative Protestant roots coming through. He's not quite jettisoned them yet to join the NFP crew, but he's trying hard.
One aspect. So I don't think it's enough to ask the question of, are they intending against this end, and are they married? And is this completed in the proper mode? Because there are many different, there's the object of the act, the end of the act, and then
the object of the act and the end of the act are the same, unless you decide otherwise.
The circumstances surrounding the act. And there's a lot of different ways in which this could fall forth from full integrity. And one of the ways in which I firmly hold, in which I think comes from Scripture, I think it comes from tradition. I think this is affirmed by Venerable Pius XII. This is affirmed by Blessed Innocent XI, is that, and I think we always need to be open to the possibility of the fact that when one is seeking pleasure alone, and I think that alone is
open to the possibility of seeking pleasure alone is wrong. No, we don't need to be open to that possibility. We need to be Catholic, and that's what the Catholic Church teaches. It's the horse and mule. When you're pursuing pleasure alone, the devil hath power, and that's the reason why everybody died who got married to Sarah and Tobit, okay, until Tobias, because he says, not for fleshly lust, only for posterity. And God said, yes. That's where we get procreation alone, right there. There's other places too, like for this reason, he for this reason he shall leave his husband or leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. For this reason is procreation. That is the reason. And as I said before, Council of Trent / Roman Catechism says it's the sole purpose.
It's very important, but pleasure alone in the marital act, that's not free from sin. And if something contains sin in it, then it is not going to strengthen that bond.
Totally agreed. He's right. I've talked. Who is that? What's that website? The Uncharted Catholic Man. I think those guys are going to unchart themselves right out of the church eventually, because they're basically every other episode is about how NFP stinks, which it does. And they're like, hey, what's the purpose of this? And what happens, I think, when people get going with this NFP, they're pursuing secondary ends, and that takes on a life of its own. And then chastity or control gets hard because you're just trying to do these secondary ends all the time. And it's like, wow. So this is why in some ways, if that's not your goal, it's a little more manageable, but it's hard for an alcoholic to hang out at the bar and just have one drink. Pretty hard. Okay. He has to do things a certain way so it doesn't happen. But when these spouses are all about the secondary ends, man, all about it, then it takes on a life of its own. And this is why the church says it's a venial sin. That's why after menopause, venial sin. That's a hot topic. We'll get there. Just so much going on, like you, so much.
With another person. When one is uniting with another person over a good and noble end, that bond is strengthened and their bond with God is strengthened.
Right.
But if somebody's uniting with another person over an end that is not completely good and noble, that's not going to be somehow conducive towards their relationship with each other.
Exactly. Hello. people can, that's why I think it's Casti 65 says the wife becomes a prostitute when you do not pursue procreation and when you do things so that there's no babies born. She's a prostitute. He is a paramour. The in-laws, says St. Augustine, the father-in-law is a pimp. That's what's happening. So Christian's onto something here. This is what I was talking about, how there's fractures in the brotherhood here, and they're trying to keep it all on the tracks. It's like Christopher Hitchens, whoever that was, on the bull. Yeah. Is that who that was? Dawson? I can't remember.
And their relationship with God. Now, I think we can discuss and debate, and this is, I think the concern is beautifully brought forward by Venerable Pius XII in his address to midwives. He says, it is good and noble to seek the pleasure which is, brought about in a properly ordered marital act, but we need to equally, alongside that positive affirmation of goodness, when it comes to the appetites in any sort of well-ordered act, because, we're not Manichaeans. We don't say the appetites are necessarily bad. Along with that, we have.
By the way, the Manichaeans didn't think the act was bad. They just didn't think procreation was good. So Manichaeans were the first to do NFP. Quote me on that. St. Augustine says as much. He's like, you Manichaeans, back when I was with y'all, you were like, hey, if we just limit this to certain times of the month, we won't have babies. So they weren't saying the conjugal act was bad. They were saying kids are bad. But while I'm pushing pause, because he's going to get to Pius XII, let's go to a little bit of these notes, all right? Because we want to keep up on the notes. Groovy, bear with me, y'all. Hang on, right here. What's next? Let's read a little St. Francis de Sales for a minute, and then eventually we're going to get down to what they're talking about, okay? Hang on. The French version, which is the one you have to get, and I put links to all this stuff. The Intro to the Devout Life French version is important. So, nuptial commerce is so holy and just and commendable in itself, which sounds modern. That's cool. Okay, hold on. Is nevertheless in certain cases dangerous to those that exercise it. That's what Christian Wagner is talking about. For it frequently debilitates the soul with venial sin. How can it debilitate the soul with venial sin frequently? Casti 59, anyone? When it's disordered, when it perverts the order, when you're trying to not get pregnant, when you are thinking in your mind, I don't want kids, okay? That messes things up. You start doing that, the way you think about your spouse gets messed up. And in cases of mere simple excess, and sometimes it kills effectually by mortal sin, as when the order appointed for the procreation of children is violated and perverted. Notice they didn't say the two ends, Timothy. They said the order, which is procreation, is violated. So procreation is the order. And when they say simple excess, I think they're talking about, he's being modest, but just too much extra activity to get to the point, all right? So, in which case, according to the parts, departs more or less from it. So the sins are more or less abominable, but always mortal. When you pervert the end, it's a mortal sin. Family planning. What is the end? Children. Today, we have two natures, so the end is love. Okay, and that's the primary end now because you only have to be open to children. So I'm open. Hey, picnic, I'm all about the picnic. Rain or shine, I'm open to either one. It's cool. Whatever God wants to give us, it's fine. I'm totally open. No, you've made the picnic number one, not the weather. Okay, so in this case, with the conjugal act, children are number one, not being merely open to them. Okay, with the procreation of children being the principal end of marriage, one may never lawfully depart from the order. Yep. Except now, because marriage is a love compact, there's no more law. It's all love. No one's departing from anything. What's all this legalism stuff? St. Francis de Sales, you need to read some Christopher West. That's what you need, bro. You got a problem right there. Oh, it cannot at that time be brought about as it happens with barren. Okay, yeah. So look, on account of some accident, I've already talked about this in other videos. So yeah, barrenness, pregnancy prevents generation. Okay. Provided the rules of generation be followed. So it's got to be ordered, and that you've got to follow the rules of generation, and it's a venial sin if there's no procreation available, permanent, and this is what I was talking with my son about. It gets a little confusing, and I'm going to have to comb over that Casti 59, the difference between infertile during the monthly cycles versus infertile after menopause. One is allowed and one is not, because for reasons of time just means temporary time. It's got to get nailed down. It's a little tricky, and because it gets a little tricky, people just say, I'm going to do whatever I want. It's all fine. Get out of here. That's why I say any questions specifically about what I'm saying, we're going to take care of it and nail it down instead of me like rambling off the top of my head. We're going to do it in writing in the comments. All you want. Shy you will not be. Yes. Oh, there's my really hard to get quote from Pope Innocent. The use of marriage only for pleasure is free from all fault. That is condemned. There it is right there. There it is right there. Oh, here we go. This is Aquinas. Further, the aforesaid act is no different than fornication. Okay, Timothy Gordon? The marriage act will always be evil unless it is excused by the aforesaid goods. If you're not paying the debt because somebody wants to get pregnant, or somebody wants to pursue procreation, it's fornication. It's evil. If unless it's excused by those goods, you're not doing something to not make it pregnant. Okay, let me push pause for a second. Okay, this is my stumper trick question for Timothy Gordon. Casti 59. Holy Church knows well that not infrequently, as Aquinas said earlier, not infrequently one of the parties is sinned against rather than sinning, when for a grave cause he or she is reluctantly allows the perversion of the right order. That means somebody isn't pursuing procreation. They're perverting the order. That's venial sin if it's just in their mind, but it's mortal sin if it is planning, okay? And if it's organic planning, like you're planning to do onanism or you're planning to do NFP, in such a case, there is no sin on the innocent spouse, provided, mindful of the law of charity, he or she does not neglect to seek to dissuade and deter the partner from sin. So, Timothy, what is her sin in this case? This does not refer to artificial contraception at all. That can never be tolerated by the innocent spouse, never. But the innocent spouse can tolerate the venial sin of using the act strictly for a remedy of concupiscence, as long as you let them know this isn't cool. Okay. And the innocent spouse can also tolerate onanism, as long as you let them know this isn't cool, because it starts natural and it finishes disordered. Okay. So you can start it natural and you can tolerate this stuff. The innocent spouse can never tolerate what is immediately illicit, already illicit. Anything artificial can never be tolerated by the innocent spouse. This has been ruled by the penitentiary. I'll show you all the info if you want to go there. If you want me to put it in the comments, I will. But you can tolerate, like I said, anything that starts natural but ends unnatural, like NFP or onanism. So that, Timothy, is her sin, is NFP right there, or venially if it's like during menopause and stuff. Speaking of menopause, okay, this is the after menopause quote, among others. This is Aquinas. I answer that the debt may be demanded in two ways. Let's hear about that. What do they mean? First, when they ask one another by words. Secondly, when namely the husband knows by certain signs. So the wife can request the debt just by giving off a little body language, okay? But is silent through shame. Anyway, so there's that. But he has to ask for it. And even so, even though she does not ask for the debt explicitly by words, the husband is bound to pay it whenever his wife shows signs of wishing him to do so. So I think that's interesting, and also I suppose that might be the I don't know what that has to do with menopause. I think you just can't, after menopause, it's a sin either way. But I think the only way that it's going to happen for the husband is if she gives off certain signs. You know what I mean? But now we've already figured it out that it's venial sin. Anyway, that was just an interesting point about he can request the debt, but if she's giving off signs, she's requesting the debt non-verbally. So it's different for men and women. I say this question, are you open to mass? Because people say, I'm open to life. Are you like open to going to heaven? Are you open to going to daily mass? If you just walk down the street, hey, if we end up at church, I'm open. No, you have to go to church. Like you have to do procreation. So let's go back to the video for a sec because we're going to talk about hedonism.
To bring up, and he calls it the new hedonism.
Yep.
There's a certain hedonism that says that the maximalization of pleasure in a sort of luxurious way is what ought to be brought forward in and among married couples. And there's a sort of softness that I think comes with the habitual ordering towards pleasure. Because obviously there's the way in which the marital debt causes one to the use of the marital debt avoid instances of sin. One ceases the burning, one does not get burnt.
And when you request the debt so you don't get burnt as a remedy of concupiscence, that's venial sin. Put that down as quote me on that.
When one comes together with his wife. But there are also instances of people who, they do not properly, have all of these ideas in mind, and this, it spills over. There are people who, it spills over. They are not actually trying to deal with those vices, those sexual vices they have, and they're approaching marriage and they're approaching their wife like they would approach, any other woman. They don't have those issues.
That's right. Because what are you thinking of mostly? You and what you want and your remedy of concupiscence. That's what's on your mind, okay? And then, like I said, it kind of takes on a life of its own, and that's why people are using marriage for this deal. And this is why I think Our Lady of Fatima said a lot of marriages are not good, and Casti 108 calls it the art of subtle. Wait, shoot. What is that word? Hang on. Let me look. This is so good. We're going to breeze over a little bit. Okay. So here, Casti 104, this is exactly what he's talking about. The faithful must be on their guard against the overrated independence of private judgment. Okay. Hello, discernment of NFP. Okay. So they're saying, no, we have to it's objective law, objective order, not about what you think and what you pray about. You know what I'm saying? Consequently, everything must be referred to the law and the mind of God in order to bring the universal permanent restoration of marriage. That's exactly what I say. And if you don't get rid of NFP, we will never restore marriage No, no, and no way. What else is in here? There's so much in here. Okay. Hang on. Certainly, if the latter-day subverters of marriage, who could that be? Entirely devoted to misleading the minds of men and corrupting their hearts, making a mockery of matrimonial purity and extolling the filthiest of vices through books and pamphlets and other new. Okay, that's the rhythm method. That's what that is. That's what he's talking about. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, there's a lot I could say here. Like I said, I did a whole video about this encyclical. It took 3.5 hours. It's called how Casti Canubi kills NFP 18 times. We're almost there. We're almost to the part I want to talk about. Okay. Thus it will come to pass, the faithful will wholeheartedly thank God they are bound together by his command to lead and gentle compulsion to fly as possible from every kind of idolatry of the flesh. Theology of the body equals idolatry of the flesh. That's what they why don't you retitle it that? Idolatry of the flesh. Woo! From these base slavery passions. It's all about it. Affect and feeling, power, blah, blah. Grant measure, abominable opinions, man's dignity. Oh, yeah. Okay. It's all about dignity. The title of the perfect marriage. For better forever, as Gregory Popchak says. Which indeed, so there's all this stuff, all this early proto-Christopher West stuff going on. He's like, heck no. Nothing, and that's depraved marriage. That's because you're using marriage to not get pregnant. And what do you get? You get horse and mule, the devil hath power. Only in the Douay Reams, I'd like to hear Tobit 6 or whatever in some other Bible. It's just not there. Find where it says horse and mule in the New American Bible. Please, someone show me. I can't find it. Here we go. Number 108. This is it. Such wholesome instruction, okay, will be quite different than the exaggerated physiological education. That's NFP. By some reformers of our time, make the pretense of those join. They totally get into it, which is okay. So what he is calling NFP is the art of sinning in a subtle way, rather than the virtue of living chastely. The art of sinning in a subtle way. Why do I say that's NFP? Because NFP is subtle. You're not doing anything, like Timothy Gordon keeps on. He says it all. What's NFP? We're not doing anything. We're just, we're avoiding some of the more fertile times. We're not doing. No, that is subtle sin. It's the art of sinning in a subtle way. And now everyone can prance around saying, I'm an NFP instructor. Aren't I great? No. There's a problem. Now let's go back to the boys and continue.
Dealt with. So on the one hand, I absolutely affirm the marital debt. And I think that anybody who denies it is ridiculous. But I think that there is a tendency among many individuals to not be open to the possibility that there is instances of seeking pleasure alone that are common. And then also sort of alongside this, there are a lot of people who think that the only solution to sexual sin is the marital debt, which is not true at all, as you know.
And that wasn't what
okay. So hold on, we still need to finish with a little more of what do you call it? We got to get into this. We got to get into midwives, because he was talking about the what do you call it? Sorry, I'd taken so long. He was talking about the degeneracy. And he really likes what Pius XII said. So let's look at what he says really quick. This anti-Christian hedonism, that's it. It too often is not ashamed to elevate itself to a doctrine. Oh, brother. Hello, Humanae Vitae. The new doctrine, the new love wins, the new personalistic norm, the new unitive significance is inseparable from the procreative significance, and we're going to call that purposes. That's new doctrine. And they're not ashamed. They're out and proud. And it sure took over, boy. Yeah. Okay. No, the gravity is sanctified Christian law, extent. Okay. There are some who would allege that happiness in marriage is in direct proportion to the reciprocal enjoyment in conjugal relations. Yeah. That's called unity required. That's called, if I'm not my right to happiness. You ever heard a spouse say, you have a right to be happy? That's why that's why they do the annulments, because someone has a right to be happy. This comes from NFP. The whole right to be happy phrase originates with NFP law because reciprocal enjoyment of conjugal relations, unitive. What did Timothy Gordon say? Is everyone having a good time here? Are we having reciprocal enjoyment? Unity is required. Knock, knock. Earth to Tim. This is condemned trash. It is not so. Okay, Timothy Gordon, it is not so. He says so right here. This is Pius XII, midwives. Indeed, happiness in marriage is in direct proportion to the mutual respect of the partners, even in their intimate relations, not that they regard immoral and refuse that what nature offers. Okay. Yeah. That's fine. Anyway, so yes, you need to respect and all, but again, you have to have the law number one, not the happiness number one. That's the point. Now, Pius XII, he got a little squishy. Pius XII, midwives, is like intro to Humanae Vitae. This is the jumping off point where they took Casti Connubii and trashed it because they said, you can trash nature for grave reasons. That's what they said. That's what's going on. But it still has some good stuff in it because he hasn't left the building yet. Just like Christopher West, he says some good stuff. There's some things that I'm like, yeah, that was inspiring. He said some cool things. But he's generally a goofball. He's Timothy Gordon's right about that. Okay. In the performance of they're talking to the midwives. Okay. Show how nature has given truly the instinctive desire for pleasure. Yeah, it's called instinct. Right. Also, by the way, instinct says you're fertile when you get pregnant. Oh, I want to show you one thing. Just a minute. I'm going to show it to you really quick.
Well, NFP is super easy. We use a mucus-based method, but I don't really like the word mucus, so we just use 2 rules instead. If you want to be intimate with your husband, then that means you are fertile. If you don't want to be intimate with your husband, then that means you're not fertile. Hey, Dad.
That's what I'm talking about. Instinct. NFP violates instinct. You heard it from Laura Horn. Too far with Laura Horn. I wonder how she's doing, by the way. Anyway, yeah. When the time is right, the time is not right. It's total. It's like on its face against natural instinct. Okay, so let's see what else it says. Pleasure sanctions love as an here. Show how nature is given truly the instinctive desire for pleasure and sanctions it in the lawful marriage. Okay, so it's got to be ordered, not as an end in itself. Hello, Christian Wagner, you are right. Timothy Gordon, you are wrong. It can't be an end in itself, but rather in the service of life, which means that life is procreation is primary. Okay, so when you hear Christopher, who is it? Scott Hahn, smiling Scott Hahn, talk about life-giving love. That is code for procreation secondary. What this is called love-giving life. It's contract-giving life, basically. So the love is not an end, but is in the service of life. When you hear life-giving love, it's backwards. it's contract, life-giving contract. Life-giving contract is what they mean. Is what the marriage is. Anyway, so you can't use pleasure as an end in itself. That's the point. It's got to be oriented toward procreation. Banish from your heart. Cult of pleasure. Yep. NFP is the cult of pleasure. Why are you doing it? Oh, I don't know. Okay. So, that's that. Okay. Anyway, there's a lot more I could say on that. There's just a ton, but it'll go on too long. Let's go back and finish these guys up. See what we got to say on them. Go. Ready, go.
Will was suggesting, but what interests me, and I wish we had more time for, was the former thing. And there's a conceptual difficulty that I don't think you're realizing or acknowledging with the idea of pleasure alone. You do anything for pleasure alone, and it is at least venially sinful, right? So, yeah,
I guess so. If it's disordered, if If you do anything for pleasure alone, yeah. If it's not properly ordered, well, hang on. Let's hear what he has to say.
Sorry, you do anything, or we're reasoning about taste and touch, 2 of the 5 senses, for the sake of pleasure alone, and it's at least venially sinful. So I was going to say pray, but there's limits because it's taste and touch. But what I would say is, given that it's
if you eat a donut for pleasure alone, that's a venial sin. I can't quite figure that one out. I mean, anyway, continue.
Orthodoxy and Orthodox teaching of the church that the 2 purposes are inseparable, right? Stated by Casti Connubii.
There's nowhere in Casti Connubii that says there's 2 inseparable purposes of marriage. Nowhere. It's right there, my man. Right there. 17. Hello. Where are we? Boom. There's Timothy, you've got nothing. You have nothing. You can't find it anywhere. Here. So it's all about children. Okay, they should bring up children. The primary end of marriage is procreation. The primary end of marriage is procreation and education of children. The primary end of the conjugal act is procreation. There is no inseparable end of unity. It's not there. There's nothing in Casti that says you got to have unity under the restricted legal definition. You can say our marriage partnership requires unity all you want, or our love language requires whatever, but that's not legal marriage. Sorry, I'm digressing. Kinda. Let's go back. All right, guys, go.
Implied by Catechism of Trent and then repeated in Gaudium et Spes.
Yeah, Trent says procreation alone. There is no other purpose. Gaudium blew the lid off everything. And like I said, I shouldn't say homos. It's all goofed up. Gaudium is a radical destruction of marriage if you consider it binding in law. But as we know, Paul VI said, hey, I never said Simon Says this stuff isn't binding.
If the purposes of every sexual act that's open to life are procreative powers intact, and
the procreative powers intact is not a purpose. That's not a purpose. Sorry, Tim. That's called that's just the what do you call it? The intrinsic nature. You have to have more than intrinsic nature. You have to have order as well. 2 things: the intrinsic nature and the ordered purpose.
It's good for the spouses.
Doesn't have to be good for the spouses. It's nice if it is. It doesn't have to be good. Otherwise, as I'm trying to tell you, your marital debt is dead. If it has to be good, we already went over that.
And the goods are noble and worthy. Then, can you give me how could one conceivably? I know theoretically it's possible. It's just not practically.
He's laying it down here. Timothy Gordon is saying, look, Christian, what's all this venial sin for pleasure stuff? If they're open to life, everything's in the yes column, and they're pursuing pleasure, what is the problem, Christian?
Possible to say, I'm going to do this noble act that's good.
And it's noble. Because church says it's all good. We're forgetting about what Aquinas said about how it's all fornication unless excused by procreation. We're not going to talk about that anymore. We're just going to talk about how it's good, it's natural. What's the problem, Christian? You're hung up, bro. What's up? Talk to me.
Of itself, with my wife, it's good in and of itself when in their graces that come from it naturally. Anytime we get together and we're not contracepting, even if the couple feels animated, and I don't know what the metric for it is, since we're talking about action, we have to give people a metric. How could you come together with your wife, do this noble act, you're not contracepting, and anyone claim that it was purely for pleasure when it's conducing to your good, when it's conducing to your mutual good?
How could you claim it's only for pleasure? I guess if you are not thinking in your mind that I want to get pregnant, that's one way. Or if you're just using it for a remedy for concupiscence, or if you are using it's a mortal sin, if you're using a method so seed and egg don't come together.
And if the purposes are inseparable, how would that even be possible?
If the purposes are inseparable, how would that even be possible? He makes an excellent question. If unity or love or togetherness is inseparable from procreation, and you're doing it for those secondary reasons, and you're open to life, how could there ever be a problem? There can't be. The point is that we have a new nature now imposed by NFP, which came to us through the 51 midwives, got brought up in Gaudium, became put in law, in the new code, okay? So everything's cool now, right, Christian? What are you going to do with that?
Well, I mean, the purpose of an act is not the only aspect of a moral act.
Okay, continue.
No, of course not.
There's certain circumstances, and like I could give a really silly example. If you are voyeuristically, having intercourse with your wife in public, that would be an act which is maybe you're not contracepting.
Of course.
That's just a dumb example. So we're trying to stay really focused on the question. If the marriage act is noble all by itself, doesn't matter what you're doing with it, as long as it's noble by itself, you're open to life. What the frick is the problem? And you're pursuing the goods because they're always connected. If you're pursuing pleasure, you're pursuing procreation, as long as you're not using artificial contraception, because they're always connected. It is impossible to separate the secondary ends from the procreative ends because they are united, according to Timothy Gordon and Humanae Vitae. Therefore, or the spirit of Humanae Vitae. Therefore, how can you possibly commit venial sin while doing everything Humanae Vitae says? How is that possible? That is the question to Christian Wagner, who's being a little stick in the mud here. He's not writing the camouflage hermeneutic of NFP continuity very good. And Timothy Gordon might be feeling a little, I don't know, guilt or who knows what. Hang on.
I'm assuming, I don't know, but it's still like a silly example, but that's a circumstance of the act, which is, it is necessarily sinful, and therefore it is somehow destroying, evil in one of its causes destroys the whole act. Whereas to be good, it has to have everything.
Proper bracketing, though. Let's use the proper bracketing. It's not. It's rightly ordered in all the ways. That's the whole point. Because you seem you're.
If it's rightly ordered in all the ways, if the act is rightly ordered in all the ways, there can be no objection, obviously. So the problem is, rightly ordered has been turned on its head by Lila Rose and those who came before her by saying that love wins. That's the new order. You take the nature of marriage and you create a new nature and put it on the side of it and just bolt it on and call it inseparable. Who are we to judge? Because everyone wants their secondary ends without the baby. Everybody does. So how are we going to achieve that? By adding it to it and bolting it onto the side and calling it a development or calling it helpful or something. And it just like I said, it destroys marriage. It's like saying, we're going to take the roof off of your house and we're going to say that your property lines are now 53 miles west of Venus. They go all the way up there. Okay. You don't have any more. You have no more legal rights because entire universe is now your property because you have no roof on the house because we bolted the entire universe to your legal description of your marriage or your house. It's the same with love. You put love onto nature. Nature is infinite. Everyone has infinite dignity. Gender is whatever you feel is good for you.
Yeah, sure. If you have an act with the right order in all ways, good ends, good object, good circumstances, then it's a good act. And those are the interior things those are the questions I don't want to beg. The petitio, I don't want to principio. I want to say, so all of the occasions and the material circumstances are right, and we're not contracepting. You're not it's not conducing to scandal with voyeurism. But this could be something to think about maybe for next time.
I hope there's a next time. We're just
judging. And of course, telos isn't the only consideration. I mean, something has four causes, and it's intelligible because of its formal
You're losing
aspect,
us, Tim.
not its final or its teleological aspect. But we're talking about the fact that the church has taught definitively that there are two inseparable teloses.
Kids, what's wrong with this picture? The church has taught definitively that there are two inseparable teloses. Heresy, wrong, bad, dumb, not good, totally retarded. Totally, man. No, it's all new speak. There's only one telos, one order. We've gone over it a bunch of times. There's a ton of quotes I could find that back me up. And all Timothy Gordon has is his little piece of paper there, right there, okay, and stuff written on it. And he's not showing it to you. This is why I show the receipts on the article, on the video, which is why I'm inviting Tim to either come on the channel, or how about just show up in the comments and tell me something. Go ahead. Be not afraid.
Purposes. So anytime you're doing the act without some sort of impediment, direct impedimentation to the act, like contraception, that's what makes it wrong when you subvert it. But when you do the act for it,
that makes the act wrong when you subvert it. When you subvert the ends, you mean? Yeah, because here, let's just listen. No. Go back just a minute.
Impediment, direct impedimentation to the act, like contraception, that's what makes it wrong when you subvert it.
Okay, contraception subverts it. Contraception subverts the ends, and that's what makes it wrong. Correct. Okay, so what did you subvert? You put procreation secondary, didn't you? Okay, so when you use NFP, what are you putting secondary? Procreation. Same. You're subverting the ends. It's all you're doing. It's the subtle art of sinning. What is it? What would it say in Casti again? Let me see. Casti 108. The art of sinning subtly. The subtle art of whatever down here somewhere. Hang on. Anyway, that's what's up when you use the NFP. You're disordering the act. So it's same as I've said this in other videos. NFP is contraception, not because it works the same way, but it does the same thing, and it is contraception. Okay, abortion is a word like that. Abortion is killing a baby, or it can be killing a baby, but it's also, you can abort mission, you can abort a lot of things. You can consummate a lot of things. It doesn't always mean what the word is associated with. So contraception isn't always meaning artificial. There's natural contraception. And that's all that NFP is.
But when you do the act for itself and you have these three fonts.
The act for itself, and you have those three fonts. Now, a font is not a legal word, but he's saying as long as, if you're married, and he says procreative and unitive. He's got to be disabused of this garbage. It turns marriage into this into the secondary end club, okay? And you're pursuing that, and like I said, it makes people a little bit nuts, and they get into it, and that's why they say horse and mule. The devil hath power. If you're doing it for a secondary end, it's a total setup. And Timothy Gordon has walked right into it, and I think he does it either for personal and or political reasons. But man, oh man, he does not want to touch it.
I would say it's an overcomplication to say, well, so we're doing the act for the purposes of being open to the generative powers.
Again, that's not a purpose. That is a property, okay? You're not doing the act to be open. You're doing the act to pursue. But he has to say it because he can't say it any other way.
Mm-hmm. The procreative powers, and for the purpose of unitivity, which is for the good of the spouses.
Whatever.
I've already guaranteed it's noble and worthy. Therefore, it's impossible.
Yeah, Aquinas says, no, it's not noble and worthy unless it's ordered toward procreation. It has nothing to do with good of the spouses.
That point. Even if the agent might misjudge that they're doing it mainly for pleasure, then it's pleasure alone.
So he's saying that it doesn't matter what's in your head as long as you're doing everything right. Because doing everything right means it's in your head.
At least some aspect that is because form is specified by intent, right? There's some aspect that is shaping the act, animating the act, that qualifies for both of the two purposes.
Mm-hmm. And I think I get a lot more what you're saying, But I do also think that I'm a mind who is synthetic. I want to take all of its different aspects and keep it together. Unfortunately, I have to go in a few minutes.
Yeah.
I want to keep everything.
He wants to keep everything together. There's a little bit more to this video, but we got to go through some notes real quick. Okay, hang on. We got to finish some of these notes. And he basically is admitting, and he's going to continue to admit, turn this heater on, that he can't quite square the circle. He can't quite get rid of what the Pope said. Pope Blessed the 11th. Was that his name? Yeah. Pleasure alone is sin. Timothy Gordon saying that's impossible. What are we going to do now? We're going to just talk about it later, but we'll block annulment proof. That's for sure. Hold on. Let's go to the notes. See what else we got. Just a minute. Do. Okay. Oh yeah. Well, this actually we already went through this. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone here. We're going to go to the rest of this video
together, but I want to keep together the conciliar, briefly 20th, 21st century's statements on the unitive end, procreative end.
He wants to keep together the 20th century unitive, procreative end. Okay, take a look at our nice little hermeneutic of camouflage NFP continuity right behind me. That's what he wants to keep it together. You can't do it, but he's going to try. All right. Sorry, that was fun. Hang on. Go ahead.
Inseparability, the good of spouses, et cetera, et cetera. I want to keep that, but I also want to understand how to, interpret the statements of the popes on seeking for pleasure alone. I want to understand why the discipline of the church, even in the Catechism of Trent, heavily recommended periods of abstinence, especially before the reception of Holy Communion. In order,
he wants to understand why, how all the statements before that for pleasure is sin. And that's out the window. If NFP is in the window, you can't have it. The answer, Christian, is you need to take your blessed Pope Blessed the 11th statement and never read it again. It does not exist. That is your only answer, only thing you can do. And the reason why there were disciplines about like not during Lent, not during holy days, this and that, is because we are supposed to act as though we have husbands, act as though you have no wives, wives act as though you have no husbands. We're going to be celibate in heaven, so it starts now. In other words, we're not supposed to be overcome with this stuff. It's not all good to always be doing the act. That's why it's, as long as it's properly ordered, okay? NFP says there is no order. It's impossible for it to be disordered because you're just open. You're just open. Open is not ordered. Open is, I'll take whatever happens. No, to be pursuing it. Sorry.
Disposed towards prayer. Like I want to bring all of this stuff in together, and I don't want to destroy any of it. I want it all, and I want to understand a framework for understanding this. Build a framework rather for understanding this. In light of the reality of concupiscence and the effects of original sin.
He wants to build a framework for understanding this. As I said, Christian, memo to Christian Wagner. There is no framework. There is no hermeneutic of continuity. No framework. Here's Catholic marriage here. Here's NFP here. Not going together. Can't do it. Never going to happen. Can't happen. It's not possible. All you can do is fudge around with the words and not ask questions and no follow-up questions and nothing here to talk about. Move along. It's like taking a Protestant and introducing them to history. The answer is, but the Bible says, and we're not going to talk about what happened in France in 930 AD or anything. That doesn't exist, okay? It's what the Bible says, blah, blah.
The reality of the marital debt and the danger that comes with being in this world with original sin in relation to mortal sin.
Reality of the marital debt is non-reality if NFP is nature. NFP law says everything must be good time, togetherness, unity, all that stuff. That's NFP law. Marital debt, it's like, I use that analogy. It's like If you own a car, you can drive it as long as I tell you it's okay. So, as long as I'm unified with what you're doing with your car, it's cool, right? So you no longer have control of your car. You no longer have rights to your car as long as it's unitive for me, your next door neighbor. You can drive your car anywhere you want. You can exercise the right to your car whenever you want, as long as I consent. Sound good? Yeah, man, what could go wrong? Just keep me happy. Happy neighbor, happy car driving, right? Keep me happy. You drive a car whenever you want. Just keep me happy. And if I'm not happy, I'll let you know you can't drive the car. No problem, Christian. It's cool.
In the sexual realm, I want to understand this in relation to the ascetical life. I want to understand this in relationship with the ends of grace and of perfection preached by our mystical theologians. So I think that it's a very, very complicated question.
It's like all of Catholicism. It's simple, but it's hard. Make babies till menopause. That's it. Very simple. That's it. That's it.
that can't really get reduced to the moral judgment of, is this venially sinful or not venially sinful? There's all things are good, not all things are profitable sort of idea that might be going on here, where even if we wanted to agree to disagree on the practical question of whether, these acts of venial sin, how often they happen,
Agree to disagree. Catholics cannot agree to disagree on faith and morals. Pursuit of secondary ends is venial sin. That's faith and morals.
Whether they happen, that's ultimately going to be a question of the practical order. But what I'm more interested in is actually looking at the ends of the ascetical life and how that has played forth practically in the tradition of the church, which I think offers one of the sort of best expositions of the question.
Well, you're basically out of time. I wanted to bring you in for the locals. Where we're, I think the only we're not going to be able to do that because you have your home out. But I think where we're disagreeing is whether it's even possible for all of the elements to line up.
I agree. Timothy Gordon's saying it's not possible to sin if all the elements lined up. He doesn't mean he doesn't know. He shouldn't use the word element. The elements of marriage are exclusivity and permanence. Those are the elements. Okay, the purpose is procreation. The three goods: procreation, exclusivity, permanence. One purpose, two elements. Father Ripperger plays fast and loose with some of those words, and Timothy Gordon's using it too. But I just got to keep it straight, man, because it's easy to get confused. And when you start taking a word and putting different meaning to it, you can get anything you want. And that's the answer kind of to how do you straighten Christian Wagner out? You just change the meaning of the words and you sprinkle a bunch of Christopher West theology of the body on top and don't ask questions. That's how you do it.
For the three fonts, given what the church has taught, and to be doing a good act for in this case the wrong purposes. Of course, it's always possible to give a liberal giving, liberal donative giving for the wrong reason, or a just act not as motivated by the perfectly just man. That we know. But given that we have like you said, the 19th and 20th century church clarified this, and it does sound different from the private theologians that wrote on it before before the golden era of moral theology. It does go against it, but we're not going to be able to explicate false logoi. And
what is he talking about?
I think
we're not going to be able to explicate false logoi. I can't quite this. I wish Tim. A lot of people complain about this. He kind of he gets wordy and he uses a bunch of like Latin stuff, and people are like, what? I don't. Maybe telos isn't Latin. I don't know.
I think that what's beautiful about the magisterium is not everything that every Catholic wise man has ever written is magisterial.
Ah, shoot! Somebody's calling. Hang on. Okay, problem solved. Here we go.
Materialized, and there are times when we can't be like Hegelian. We can't include everything. Position negation does not equal synthesis, And I guess I'm on this reasonably straightforward matter, given that this is sort of the opiate for the masses, right? Copulation.
It's the opiate for the masses. It is the thing you can't mess with. You mess with it, you're going to lose your head. Okay? That's why I say stay toxic, because people... Oh, I was talking about menopause today with some people at Coffee and Donuts. They got a little bit worked up, you might say, at church on that one. After church, as far as venial sin. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to get going on that one at some point, a video about menopause. For sure.
People need a straightforward, action-oriented.
How would you interpret Pius XII address to midwives? Do you think he makes a good point when he talks about the hedonism that is being preached among the married? And how would you kind of seek practically to remedy that in ways that differ from how I have spoken? I don't really talk about this publicly that much anymore, like I used to, because I think that I don't think I really did much good when I talked about it 3 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, there's another video that he did a while back that actually he did say some good stuff. But again, it's not politically correct anymore, because if he's kind of going with the NFP crew, he probably did say some good stuff 3 years ago. And one of his videos got taken down.
I read about it and I think about it a lot, but I don't really talk about it that much, except over the last 2 or 3 weeks or however long that stated.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Pius XII, get away from marital hedonism. We have 1 minute. What are your sort of thoughts? That's all that I'm trying to really follow here.
I think the grounding context is something really specific there, with whether or not technically there's a female equivalent of pollution.
No, I don't know what he's grasping. He's trying to come up with something other than, if it's not for procreation, it's venial sin. And he's like, so now he's reaching for this. And then again, anyway.
Which is traditionally, anatomically, metaphysically a risk of the pollutive sin for men, because the formal part of the act of copulation is male O. Right? The male orgasm. The female orgasm has nothing to do with the formal part of the act, the generative formal part of the act. So I think Pius is saying that I can't exactly say why, other than it would be hedonistic.
Pius XII is saying don't be a hedonist, because it's not correctly ordered. That's all he's saying. And there is no thought at all in the dignity of man. Okay, the gravity of the sanctity of Christian work not to be admitted unchecked. Satisfaction of sexual instinct tending only to pleasure and enjoyment. That's all Timothy Gordon is advocating. He's saying, look, as long as you have the 3 fonts, it's impossible to have a problem, because he's like, look, it's pleasure and enjoyment. What's the problem? They do not permit rational man to let himself be mastered to such an extent, neither as regards to the substance nor the circumstances of the act. Christian Wagner is on to something. That's right. Okay. Sorry, I didn't need to digress on that, but whatever. Okay, he's almost done here, you guys.
To allow, if it's the passage that I'm recalling, it would be hedonistic to allow women to have a terminal act that is not connected directly or almost directly to the procreative part of the act. Otherwise, I can't give a context. I can't square Pius saying it's bad to do good and noble and worthy things.
He's right. You can't square it, and you can't square it. Blessed the 11th saying it's venial sin to pursue pleasure. You can't square it with NFP law. Can't do it. Can't. Hence, the hermeneutic of NFP continuity behind me looks weird. Maybe whenever he gave that speech, people were just not cooking their kids' meals; they're just having sex with their spouses all the time. It makes sense with the magisterium. Otherwise, unless it's that female pollution equivalent, where the church doesn't want to allow.
You're talking about losing certain duties on the basis of an over attachment to pleasure. But I really have to go. I wish I could talk for another hour, but yeah, I just got to get going. It was awesome. I appreciate you having me on.
And you're right about the synthetic. What do these guys mean when they say this? These popes, who we guys like us respect a lot, where they seem to be going the other way, or even older thinkers. But yeah,
these popes or older thinkers seem to be going the opposite way. No, they're 100% saying that there's one orientation, one telos. And that's why they say, and now Timothy Gordon's saying, there's not one, there's two. This stuff doesn't develop. It doesn't change. You don't have your vision and my vision, your opinion, my opinion, St. Thomas's opinion, his view. Oh, this view developed, and why you have these new views. And this is helpful now to describe it this way. Nothing changes. Nature is what it is. You start messing with it, and you reap the whirlwind, and you get problems.
I know you have to go, and I'll do a local stream on my own and talk about this some. But I really enjoyed having you, Christian. They can find you at your Walmart Thomist on Twitter, and you are Scholastic Answers on YouTube. Do you have 1 5-second warning, Sean?
No, I want to have last word.
He's got to go.
Find me those places. I have a Substack. It is
all right,
Scholastic.
So, y'all, I went to the locals. I'm going to do another video about that. It's going to keep going. Just when you thought you couldn't get enough, you can. You can. I'm going to give you more. Anyway, don't forget, if you're not against NFP, you're not on the team. So go out there and stay toxic. If you can invent a new nature to marriage, you can invent a new God. So I'm going to leave you with a little Jamaican ecumenism.